It's May, like the first.
All right.
May 1st.
Listen, Chin, can you hear me okay?
I can. Are we ready?
So we fixed board member Kirkbride's microphone. Hopefully that's
Okay.
fixed. Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, President Chen.
Could you hear her?
President Chen, this is board member Kirkbride. Can you hear me?
That's beautiful. Thank you. All right, let's get to work. We will now review and discuss rulemaking policy discussion items, starting with staff member Melvin and mailing G. Excuse me.
All right, staff member Melvin. This is again mailing G for those of you on the phone. This is for Division 115. This is currently our temporary rule that is going to expire in June. So the board will consider permanent adoption also in June. So for today's discussion, we just wanted to go through this very quickly. The only thing that is changing would be our version number. So this is OAR 855-115-0345. It's the prescribing for the protocol compendium. And so because of the temp rule, we're just changing the version numbers. The language in all of the protocols, nothing has been revised. So this is the proposed repeal for VVC. So that would permanently repeal that protocol. And then little g, our contraception, that again is just version 6 of 2025, which would be when the board considers, again, adoption. And then coronavirus 2019 and D and G, hepatitis B version, meningococcal, pneumococcal, RSV, and that is the end of that. So unless the board would like me to open each of those protocols, if it's necessary, please let me know. Back to you, President Chin.
Thank you. I'm not sure if we need to do a round robin or if you all would just like to raise your hands and let me know if there is discussion to be had regarding these items.
So these have already been voted on, right?
For the temporary rules currently in effect, yes. Yep. This is just voting to send it to a May rulemaking hearing for then permanent adoption in June.
Gotcha. Are there any questions from board members before we have a motion?
So this one is the whole section G, like contraception, coronavirus, hepatitis B, everything
Yes.
with the candidates protocol as well.
Yeah, everything, board member Patel, that you see highlighted in yellow are the ones that are currently in that temporary rule that's effective. Right, so back in December, I believe is when we adopted that temporary rule. And it's, remember, it's only good for 180 days.
So you're saying like candidates protocol, like, because I'm confused about that. I thought we just repeal, right? Repeal means you revoke, there's no protocol, then why it's come back again? That's what I was trying to wonder. Like,
Oh, okay, staff member Melvin. So what will happen is if the board chose to not do anything, what would happen with our temporary rule is it would expire and then this rule would revert back to the prior version. So we would have all of the incorrect versions of these protocols in our rule. That makes sense?
yeah, so I don't mind to say yes for contraception, coronavirus, hepatitis, everything, but I'm only worried about that vulvovaginal candidiasis protocol. I know that we all agree that repeal, and I was just like, I'm still kind of a little bit hesitant to repeal that protocol.
Board member Patel, what I can say is that what will happen, the action that's happening today is you're sending it out for public comment. So
Oh, perfect.
So the public will have this opportunity to provide comment and the board will make their final decision in June. So.
Perfect. Thank you. You
Okay.
answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
All right. Any other comments or concerns? All right, then hearing none. Is there a motion to move to send proposed rule OAR 855-155-035?
Oh,
To
President
May-
Chen, I'm sorry, you said
Mhm.
155. It's 115.
Thank you. Try
Thank
again.
you.
Is
Okay.
there a motion to move to send proposed rule OAR 855-115-0345 to the May 2025 rulemaking hearing?
Move, Board Member Joyce.
Board Member Beeman.
Thank you. And Board President Chin, yes. Board Vice President Joyce,
Yes.
Board Member Beeman,
Yes.
Board Member Hall,
Yes.
Board Member Hemmons,
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I was on mute. Yes.
okay, thank you. Board Member Kirkbride,
Yes.
Board Member Kroger,
Yes.
Board Member Patel.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We will now review mailing G1 regarding proposed rules related to standards adopted by reference with staff member Runyon.
Good morning, everybody. Staff Member Runyon. Staff Member Melvin's going to pull up the standards incorporated by reference in just a moment. And so this is just a yearly process where we go through and look at all of the resources that we reference in our rules, such as the federal resources like the United States Code and Code of Federal Regulations references, the DA exempted products list, other compendium like the homeopathic pharmacopoeia of the United States. We have several CE continuing education resources. There's some references in there that outline list of all of the ACPE accredited schools of pharmacy and continuing medical education providers, et cetera. So this is a list of, a couple hundred resources that we go through or references in our rules and just update those to the most recent versions. So we'll scroll through those as soon as she gets set up.
Sorry, it seems to be missing some teams, so I'm putting it back in there. It was in there, not sure what happened. There we go. Just share. And then you're good to go. All right. Staff member Melvin, so for ease of use, we will just scroll through this because it's just a large document and I'll just stop at the highlighted sections that were amended. If the board has questions, just tell me to stop, please. All right, so we're in Division 6 in definitions, and this is fairly large. I'll just keep going. Again, this is just version numbers throughout this entire document. There was no additional amendments. Now we're into Division 41. Same. Tedious.
The joys of government work.
Still in 41. Let me know if I'm driving too fast. Division 43 for dispensing. .45 drug compounding. Division 80 controlled substances. Just gonna keep going. We're almost at the end.
Staff member running, I'd personally like to thank the find and replace function in Microsoft Word for assisting in this project, though it was manually verified after.
Interns 120, CE 135, and we're almost at the end. 139 RDSP. And .141, and there we go. We're at the end. Back to you, President Shin.
Thank you. So we're open for board discussion. This is a motion to move to send proposed rules that we're going to be making, and these are just standards, rules related to the standards adopted by reference. So I will open the floor up for discussion. If any board member has questions or concerns, please raise your hand or give me a shout out.
Remember
I'll-
Kirkbride?
Hmm?
Just a comment, as you know, we've had a lot of conversations about thinking about new ways of doing things and doing things efficiently. And one thing that I have used in the past, like having worked on the PFAC committee and updating vaccine protocols, it might be useful to the board, and I don't know, to have like a little summary document available that says the following references have been updated: the USC, the CFR, the NF, from this version to this version. If we just started the conversation with that, and as you're scrolling through, like the board has already seen, this document has been updated from 24 to 25. Then as you're scrolling through, I would think people are gonna like stop and ask as many questions because you already know, okay, I already know these references have been updated to a new version. Like maybe that would be helpful. I don't know if other board members feel like that would be useful rather than the scrolling. It's my first time seeing that, and I'm like watching the words whizzing by. I'm like, gosh, that's a lot to digest. But just a thought as I was seeing this for the first time. I don't know how others feel.
Staff member Runyon, thank you for the input. We do have an internal document via an Excel spreadsheet that more succinctly identifies the transition from the previous references to this one. So we could by all means include that next time, next year. But I think we have a document very similar to what you're describing. So I appreciate the input, and we'll include that next time.
Also, staff member Melvin, in our gray box, board member Kirkbride, when we file these with the Secretary of State, this is something I have to add on every single rule I have to input. So our rules summary always typically tells you what's changing in the rule.
I do see it there.
Yes, and I apologize. This mailing was in your Teams folder. I'm not quite sure what happened, if it got deleted, but this was also on our website with the mailings. So sorry about that.
And I don't want to add more work, so only if other board members feel like that piece would be useful. I don't want to add more work just to add more work, but I think it might be useful and make it more efficient to just see a quick summary. As I support the changes.
Whatever makes it easy to digest, and I agree. Scrolling through the whole thing is rather massive. Either doing it, there are some board members who might scroll to look for any type of potential error, and if we've done this as a kind of a double check when I've been on other board And so having it available for board members to read every part of that is, or scroll and read the parts that were highlighted as desired. But having a briefer version that you're suggesting, Board Member Kirkbride, would probably be a nice thing as well. Any other thoughts? Am I still on?
Yes. No
I'm
hands.
not hearing chatter in there. Okay. Are there any other questions, comments, or suggestions then? Oh, hearing none, let's have we'll go to the proposed motion if everybody's ready. Okay. Is there a motion to move to send to proposed rules OAR 855-006-0005, OAR 855-041-1046, OAR 855-041-1092, OAR 855-041-1145, OAR 855-006-0005.
Oh, I'm sorry,
OAR
Board President Chen, you already read that line. Go down one more line. Start with
Thank you.
0417050. Sorry.
Thank you. OAR 855, I put my mark at the wrong spot, 0417050. OAR 855-043-0543. OAR
Oh,
855.
sorry. That was 0545.
OAR 855-043-0545.
Thank you.
OAR 855-043-0740. OAR 855-045-0200. OAR 855-045-0205. OAR 855-080-0020. OAR 855-080-0021. OAR 855-080-0022. OAR 855-080-0023. OAR 855-080-0024. OAR 855-080-0026. OAR 855-080-0028. OAR 855-080-0031. OAR 855-080-0065. OAR 855-080-0070. OAR 855-080-0075. OAR 855-080-0085. OAR 855-115-0125. OAR 855-115-0130. OAR 855-120-0005. OAR 855-135-0001. OAR 855-139-0145. OAR 855-139-0350. OAR 855-139-0460. And OAR 855-141-0350 to the May 2025 rulemaking hearing.
Move Board Member Joyce.
Second, Board Member Beeman.
Thank you. Board President Chin, yes. Board President, Vice President Joyce.
Yes.
Board Member Beeman.
Yes.
Board Member Hall.
Yes.
Board Member Hemmons.
Yes.
Board Member Kirkbride,
Yes.
Board Member Kroger,
Yes.
Board Member Patel.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We will now review. Sorry, just making some notes. Discuss and mailing of G2 with staff member Runyon.
Staff member Runyon, mailing G2. This is the proposed standard vaccination protocol. This one in particular is for 18 years of age and older. As discussed previously, if adopted by the PFAC, there would be 4 vaccine protocols, one for 6 months through 2 years of age, 3 years of age through 6, 7 through 17 years of age, and then 18 and up. This takes sort of some elements, structural elements from several different resources, like the Virginia Board of Pharmacy's protocol, New Mexico Board of Pharmacy's protocol, what we had in our existing protocols, and then OHA protocols, kind of fuses them together in such a way that create a standard for the process of evaluating and administering these vaccines, so as to create a standard in the patient care that they'll receive. And then there's also a fluid element to it as well that would be updated in response to emerging guideline updates from the ACIP or CDC. So between those two things, this should allow us to be more nimble in adapting to emerging changes so that we can ensure our patients are getting the most up-to-date care. Again, this is just a concept, if you will, or kind of just a suggestion. I'm not partial to any component of this, and of course, this would undergo review by the subject matter experts in the PFAC if you choose to send it there. And yeah, I'll let you discuss it from here, President Chen.
Thank you, Board Staff Runyon. Appreciate all your work on this, since it was definitely a direction from the board. I think I'll go ahead and use a roundtable for this one. The last person when we did a roundtable was Kirkbride. So Board Member Hemmons, you would be first. If you'd rather go last, that would be fine. You can let me know what your preference is.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Board Member Kroger.
Board Member Kroger, thank you for this. This is definitely, I think, what I was hoping for to streamline things. I think the only comment right now is I've, just digest and consider all the, unintended implications of this. I think we wanted it to be the inclusive. There was a handful of vaccines that were missing from ACIP recommendations. I don't think they're captured here yet, but I know this is kind of like a first look, so and PFAC has to take a look as well. But I think what I'm understanding is you've almost taken the big sections of our current protocols, and it's here, but now it's just referencing the other stuff kind of all at once. So it's good to me. Thank you. I know it's a lot of work.
Thank you. Board Member Beeman.
Member Beeman, I think it looks good, and thanks for it's not- There are many discussions about doing that.
Board Member Joyce.
Board Member Joyce, no, it looks great. The only thing was, I believe some of the links were broken, but that'll fix itself eventually. Hopefully, CDC.
Thank you. Board Member Patel.
Board Member Patel, there's no additional comment, but yes, I'm in favor of streamline, and I like it. I like it. Board Consultant Gary Runyon. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Board Member Chin. I would echo what Board Member Broker, I think, had said about just being inclusive of all the vaccines that are maybe sometimes one-offs here in our country, just for the sake of having everything in one place and not having to do any kind of emergency rules if something were to pop up in our country because of world travel. Otherwise, I think it looks fabulous and I applaud your work and hope that the PFAC is able to run with this and bring it back. Board Member Hall?
Member Hall, I agree with what everyone said and I have no additional comments.
Thank you, Board Member Kirkbride.
This is pretty awesome. I think when we first were met with this task, we were faced with two pathways and we were told the appetite was to kind of go in the other direction, kind of favoring what we had before. And I think this actually also fits in with the conversation we're having around standard of care and kind of moving in that direction and having, less of that directive. So I think that all fits together in this package. Couple of comments. I do think we maybe need to have more of a robust conversation about those emergency use vaccines. I'm curious what other states are doing, and we might want to look at or consult NASPA. NASPA has good resources as far as like vaccine prescriptive authority. Not a lot of states do it by state protocol, but certainly we could see what other states are doing who reference pharmacists may prescribe by ACIP and kind of see how they're handling. I don't know that a lot of states throw in those emergency vaccines. And so I'm trying to think through because, those would be available on our website and like, what would the public perception possibly be? We could have them in our back pocket and have them available, but do we want them public facing? So just a conversation to have. I'd be curious how other states are handling, being that they're not even available, like anthrax and Ebola vaccine are not available to pharmacies. So I think we should have a conversation about how we handle those vaccines. I don't right now have one feeling one way or another. And then the other comment I had, just as you were going through the beginning, I just want to make sure we note for that 6 months of age, I think it would actually be, because that one's for influenza only, that would be 6 months to 6 years, right? For flu only, because that protocol would have to cover everybody from 6 months to 6 for flu. Correct? Because the 3 would only be enacted in an emergency situation, and that one would include the whole entire schedule from 3 to 6. Does that make sense?
Staff member running, yes, and I think that's how I have it outlined in that protocol. So essentially, for 6 months and up, we have the influenza, and then 3 years and age through 6, we had the COVID for the PrEP Act, and then 7 and up, we essentially just billed as they're available for the age range. So that is spelled out in that very way in the other protocol.
Good. Yeah, just when you said it, you had said 6 to 2, and I just wanted to make sure we didn't short ourselves on that flu opportunity, so. Yeah, it's great. I'm very excited for this work to commence, and I think it will be, it matches up with priorities of our stakeholders and will be really good for pharmacists and for the public.
Board Member Kroger, just wanted to share with Board Member Kirkbride on the OHA website, they have model immunization protocols, not to be used by pharmacists, but they exist and they look like the old ones we used to use. They do have a section on emergency preparedness, post-exposure prophylactics, which includes anthrax, some other things, pneumonic plague. So it's out there, but I agree with your sentiment that maybe just taking a little bit more time on including the inclusive list and what we want to do if there's a fit protocol for emergencies or something, not to make it more because we're trying to go the other direction, but OHA does have information and model protocols for some of those things already.
Fabulous.
Maybe the move is that our new executive director gets pharmacists included in the OHA protocol so that when an emergency would be enacted, that we could just use theirs. Just a thought.
That, run, I'll pass that along to the.
Staff member Melvin, I have a quick question for the board. Would, board member Kirkbride, would you, and Kroger, because we have the PFAC meeting is on April 23rd, and if the board does end up sending this to them, do you want them to have that discussion as well about this inclusive list? Just
Yeah, I would love for PFAC to discuss that.
Okay.
Certainly we wanted to include anything a pharmacy is able to order and bring into their pharmacy, including all routine and travel vaccines. The question mark is around emergency vaccines. The word's escaping me. Disaster preparedness vaccines, that pharmacies don't have access to. How would we handle those in a protocol situation? But we would want this list to be inclusive of everything a pharmacy can order for all routine, all travel.
Because it's not on. It's gonna be easy to have right here. Just highlight this because I think they want us to send it.
This is a question from board member Chin. When you talked about emergency medications, when there are new vaccines, where does that fit into? Does that need to come back to the board, or does that go to PFAC, or how does that process work?
A good question, because somewhere when this was presented, the word update was used. So maybe our consultant Ryan could speak to, there was somewhere where this was talked about updates was mentioned. And we do need a way, if a new, so chikungunya is a good example. It's not on this list. It's not currently listed in the ACIP list, although there is a approved ACIP recommendation. But let's say that happened after we already published our protocol. How would we get chikungunya added to this list? Would we ask PFAC to do that? How would that happen?
That's like a statutory issue. So the way that our statute is written, they do have to go through PFAC. They have to provide, their process as part of it. It's required by the statute. So it would have to go through them, but you can send it to them and ask them to do it. Or they could, I guess, in theory, make a recommendation to the board. And I need to actually don't know the answer to that, if they could just on their own make a recommendation to the board, or if the board has to request it, but regardless, it does have to go through PFAC. So that's why I think at this point, if you guys want to add those other ones, it makes sense to take it to this next PFAC meeting so they can make that assessment.
So the act of ACIP adding it to their list wouldn't be considered an update. In the same way that a version change would be considered an update.
Board member Kroger, sorry, I'm adding to this, not trying to. So the part B of section 1B, it says vaccines from the list below. Are we required to list below those vaccines?
All comes back into the issue of so when we talked about potentially, when this comes back to, it's going to look, potentially different because there are some legal analysis that has to be done on this, and that we need to do versions on the individual vaccines because we need to know when they change, and we have to adopt those based on, the versions themselves changing. It sort of depends on how we want to go about that, but I think, there is probably further legal analysis that might need to happen in order to answer that, but I think that just looking at the way that the statute is written, it would need to go through PFAC.
Board Member Kruger, I think in general, this is fine because more of the issues are those standard vaccines updates, like, hey, we're expanding the age range, what have you. I do think that in general, the knowledge of, hey, there's a vaccine in the works, right? That, chikungunya. That's known and that process can be started so that maybe, hey, we've got a product in the works. It was just FDA approved. ACIP meets in August. This is the PFAC aware. So hopefully there isn't too many delays in that. And I think emergency situations are separate, but it still would be nice to not have to, but let's let the legal analysts take away.
So two things with new vaccines, it's either gonna be something that's used very rarely, sparingly. A lot of that innovation is travel, so small use. Or it's something huge like coronavirus, and it's gonna end up being in an emergency proclamation anyway, and so I think we're covered either way.
This is Board Member Chin. Board Member Melvin, do you have your questions answered? In terms of this moving forward to the PFAC?
Yes, I believe we have everything we need. Just a statement. We just thought we would let you know in the background that there is currently a SME working on that vaccine, but because the ACIP, it's the timing of that meeting, they weren't able to, they wanted to amend it so it was all inclusive, so it won't be ready before their 423 meeting, so they're going to bring it to the next PFAC.
Believe there was also a second product
Yes.
approved in the interim, so.
Which is why he wanted to hold off, yeah.
Okie dokie. Any
So
further?
I'm sorry, I do have one more question. So for the motion, Council Hunt, should this be as revised because the board is directing us to sort of amend this a little bit before we take it to the PFAC?
Yeah, and I think I would think that this generally the topic of it, right? That's how I was thinking of more of like sort of the vaccine topic is generally referred to PFAC versus like this specific, because like this is obviously is only one of five. So what's the motion?
So we have it drafted as proposed vaccine protocol process.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Yep.
As
So we
revised.
So we don't need to add revise then?
Because it's just process. Okay. Nope.
Okay. Good question, thank you. Any other board members or staff have any questions before we go to a motion? All right, hearing none. Is there a motion to move to send the proposed vaccine protocol process to the April 2025 Public Health and Pharmacy Formulary Advisory Committee meeting for review and approval as presented?
So moved.
Go for it, go.
Who was that?
Board Member Kroger.
Second, Board Member Kirkbride.
Thank you. Board President Chin, yes. Board Vice President Joyce,
Yes.
Board Member Beeman,
Yes.
Board Member Hall,
Yes.
Board Member Hemmons,
Yes.
Board Member Kirkbride,
Yes.
Board Member Kroger,
Yes.
Board Member Patel.
Yes.
Wonderful. Motion passes unanimously. It's about one, whatever time it is there, 11:19.
10:19.
10:19, okay. We will now have a board discussion about the rules priority list, starting with staff member Runyon. Depending on how much time we need for this discussion, I do want to just make sure we break at noon for staff and board members to have a 1 hour break at noon. So we have plenty of time, but we can continue our discussion after lunch. Okay? Okay. Okay, staff member Runyon, take it away.
Do you want to review your prior mailing age? H1 is just the same thing. I just organized it so we could use it. just to refresh their memory. Why don't we do that?
Staff member running. This is mailing H1.
Oh, H
And-
first. So I'm sorry, staff member, we're gonna start with H. This is the mailing that the board saw at the February board meeting. So it's just a rinse and repeat. H1, I took this information and made it just easier for us to amend while you guys make your decisions. So it's the same information from this slide right here. So I just wanted to just bring it back. So this is how it started. And now we're going to work on it. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Staff.
Okay.
Staff member Runyon, thank you, Staff member Melvin, for that. So as you remember from a couple months ago, the February board meeting, staff had gotten together and we presented the recommended reprioritization or redistribution of these policy topics, and the re-ranking of them, if you will, in this format that better reflects staff's workflow and also incorporates other responsibilities, such as changing laws, incorporates input from interested parties, the feedback we get from phone duty, feedback that we get in transit we notice from inspections, et cetera, to create a more comprehensive list. So I'll open this up for discussion. We're here to answer any questions. Staff member Melvin has also created a Word document from this, so we can in real time kind of redistribute things in accordance with direction of the board. President Chen, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you. Board Member Kroger, you are next up.
Board Member Kroger, I think the only, this is a lot of work. I appreciate looking into this. I think we received some mailings from interested parties as well on this. One of the items that I don't recall if we actually discussed at the February meeting as a group, but it was recommended to remove the RDSP rules from this prioritization. From my recollection, I think there was still, this was before my time on the board, but there was parts of that rule that were considered to be that the board was going to look at. So I'm not sure if I want it to be removed at this point from the prioritization. Especially recalling the board discussion prior to my time as a board member, but regarding some of the concerns that interested parties had regarding some of the rules. And I think it was mentioned in one of the letters we received as well. So I guess my question is, are we able to discuss as a group if that's something we do want removed from the prioritization, or if we want that back within the list?
So I'm gonna defer much of the conversation to licensees. Do any of the other board members have feedback for Board Member Kroger's comments regarding RDSP? I know that we had changed the mileage on RDSP, and I did not keep in my head what else needed to be addressed in RDSP.
This is Board Member Patel. Yeah, there is reason we only have one remote dispensing side. So those rules we definitely, it should be in the immediate actually. It's just we know that more pharmacies closing. We have hard time to finding pharmacists work in the rural Oregon, and current rule for the remote dispensing side, those are like overly burdensome. So I would definitely want to put RDSP and the locker rule like it's in the immediate, not even high, like above high. And you're right, board member Kroger, like, I know that we discuss about it, we talk about it, and I know we have to look into the remote dispensing side, we have to look into the telework and the prescription lockers.
And this is board member Chin. I know that that's a huge access issue to Oregonians, so I don't disagree with having, it seems like doing telework. Looks like that is all part of, well, telework has the remote processing central fill, which is a little bit different from,
Kirkbride, that's a completely different thing.
right?
I have a point of order, I guess. I would like to know how this seems like it could get a little chaotic. So I'm wondering if maybe we should start 2 lists, things we want to add as a priority list and things we want that we agree to deprioritize, and then we come to agreement on those things and then we agree to where they're placed. Not sure addressing each of them separately is gonna be effective. I don't know. I'm not sure just adding a bunch of things in is going to be the end result we want, because we're gonna have a list that's unsustainable. So I wonder if we should just go around and have each board member create a list of the things we would like to see added and like start with that.
Board member Kroger,
I don't know.
I brought up the RDSP because that was what was removed from the June 2024 board meeting. And that was the only item, I believe, removed from the previously ranked and voted board member priorities. Removed from the list in its entirety versus the rest was a bit more of like a restructuring or combining of those topics within it. You go back to that presentation from February's meeting. I see the changes. So I agree it could get messy, but this is for me personally, it's the only one that was removed from the previous priority list to the new one.
This is
This is
board
what-
member Chin's. Board member Chin, just for real quick, sorry, board member himself. So I am maybe hearing that we're not looking at opening up for just any topic, that the RDSP was the only one removed from the previous high, medium, and low priority list previously. And that was the intent of board member Kroger, that was really the only concerning thing that was removed, but that there really wasn't, you weren't suggesting an opportunity to start making this list bigger than what it is.
Correct, board member Kroger. Yeah, correct. Yeah, that was the only one that seemed to not make its way to the recommended prioritization. I'm happy to have a conversation, in board member Kirkbride's manner of like, how do we, if we want to reprioritize what was proposed, but it was the RDSP rules that when you looked at the, I don't have a slide number, recommended prioritization, what's changed. Everything else was included, maybe just reprioritized, but RDSP was removed.
Staff member Melvin, may I ask a question while I'm typing this? Are we saying we want the entire division of 139, which is RDSP, or is it select rule numbers that you would like to consider in that division?
I have not personally done that type of
Okay.
research since this was more of a high level conversation.
Yes, and we did amend it, which is why the board, before you were on the board, put RDSP at the top of that old ranking list. We did end up amending a rule. And there was discussion and I could go back and I could do the work if you would like and listen to that call. I thought it was specific rules that they were calling out, but I can't tell you off the top of my head.
Yeah, so the mileage was amended and changed, but what I recall reviewing that meeting is that there was a couple other things that would take more time than just removing mileage. There was some verbiage, the consultation things, I think those were amended as well to align with the new rules changes. But there was a few other things that, from what I recall, when reviewing that meeting for the board, that the sentiment was that they wanted to look at this.
This is Board Member Patel. You are right, Board Member Kroger. Yeah, there's just so many other things. Is that's what we have only one. Like, there's so many things we have to amend, like general requirement, the technology, supervision. So my vote is to look at the entire section of remote dispensing site, Division 139. And I do remember that we kind of go through this rule in really rush, and that's the time like I was coming on the board. I was a new board member, but I do remember there was like so many changes we are doing, and I don't think so we gave enough time on this section. And now I looking back and I was like, no, we have to change so many things, not just that mileage rule. And I also remember in that, because I was there for that June 24 meeting for the prioritization. Yeah, and I see the number one was the drug storage and second was the remote dispensing site. And I also see, I mean, I also had the same question that why it's not even a high priority. And then I said about the locker rule should be in the immediate, because correct me if I'm wrong, board consultant Ranyan, that don't we have some bill is going to be passed on the locker box, like prescription locker, pharmacy prescription locker? Is the bill is in the process right now? Is it not like some kind of technical fix we have to do and then it will pass?
Pharmacist consultant running. There are two bills actually that are in a joint addiction and community safety response committee. Senate Bill 236 and then House Bill 3046.
Yeah.
So those are in those joint committees right now, and they do address lockers, and I think they mentioned remote dispensing side pharmacies as well. So we're waiting to see what will come out of that committee. I can't tell you what will or whether it'll be passed or what that will look like, but you're correct. Those are the bills, and they do contain components that reference these rules. So.
And that's another reason I feel like that one should be in the immediate as soon as that bill passed, which is going to be probably in the June. Then we should work on that, because right now we definitely need those rule high priority to make sure like patient have access to the pharmacy. And I don't think so we put the compounding in the high as far as I remember. Anyway, I let other board members.
Board Member Kroger, I think, yeah. All I wanted was, because this is a different board from the June list, that original prioritization, RDSP was removed. At this point, I shared my feelings on putting RDSP back into the prioritization list because it was the only one that was originally removed. Is that the will of this group? So that is my question to my colleagues here today. And then as far as the other, the current recommended prioritization list and the changes that I would like to see, I agree that there's interested parties and concerns regarding cold drug storage. I would like to see that higher on the list. But I don't have major concerns with the current recommended prioritization other than the two things that I just noted. So the question to the group is RDSP something that everyone would like back within this prioritization list, or continue with the recommendations? What changed that was presented to us in February? Because I don't remember having that discussion in February.
And we did not, I don't recall either. This is Board Member Chen. I'd like to do just a quick roundtable. I would like to take this in chunks with that request, Board Member Kroger, rather than going through everybody's additional things that they might want to add. So I'm going to start just down the list with Chen. I would like to see the RDSP in terms of patient access and availability, I would like to see that back. And I agree with Board Member Patel regarding if there is legislation that is coming out in June, um, that includes us having to look at it anyway. This is a good time to make sure that it's on our priority list. Board Member Hall, your thoughts on RDSP?
Member Hall, I agree, it should be high priority.
Board Member Kirkbride?
I just want to make sure the mission, are we just talking about RDSP or are we giving
Yes.
our thoughts?
No, just talking about RDSP.
Just talking about RDSP, okay.
And to add it back to the list since it was removed from the list.
I'm not aware of the previous issues with the current rules, so I can't comment on that. I am not opposed to board members who feel like adding it to the list. I am opposed to adding it in the immediate. I think the immediate should be reserved for current past laws and public health emergencies as it's stated. I would support if board members feel this way, putting it in high. And then if a law is passed, staff would have, I mean, the idea of this is that staff would be able to move it to immediate. So that's what I would support. But I don't have personal feelings about RDSP.
This is Board Member Chin, and I would agree with that. That it's not, and it's not the red box until it becomes something that the legislator says we need to put in the red box. But I do think it's an important topic. Board Member Hemmons?
Nothing to add.
Okay, we know what Board Member Kroger's thoughts are. Board Member Beeman?
Remember Beeman, when this list was originally made, it was the meeting immediately before we lost 3 board members and gained 3 new board members. So, I am going to support what the majority of the board is in favor of for this prioritization, because you all will be working on it moving forward with the new board member in August, and I don't want to impede the will of the board in that way. And so far as the conversation, I have no opposition to anything said so far. So I want to make sure that the board is comfortable with the prioritization that they want to move forward with, and not be basing it on the voices of a former board that happened to change. The timing of it was just kind of not the best in my mind. So I don't want to have a strong opinion and then be gone in 2 meetings and kind of have that same effect. So I'm supporting what you guys are in favor of.
Thank you. Board Member Joyce?
Board Member Joyce, so I've been a board member since 2021 June, and RDSP, we were discussing it then back in 2021. And we went over RDSP in terms of mileage, how it could be monitored, security, access, distance, all kinds of issues we discussed over and over again. I understand that that's, those years ago, different board members. I'm not against putting it back on the list. I don't think it's a super high priority, but our job is is patient safety and to expand access to medications to as many Oregonians as possible. Our DSP is forefront of that. Also, as well as lockers, there is a way we could promote lockers, prescription lockers, and have them at every large hospital, every small hospital. And if there was some way we could promote RDSPs in all the rural areas, Malheur County, et cetera, that'd be great. So I do support RDSP being put back on the list. It's just, to me, not a super high priority. So that's where I'm at.
And thank you, Board Member Joyce. And I would just say that the reason for others' urgency is because the rules that we did do for those 2 topics are rather burdensome, and that's the thought process that we've heard from interested parties, is that it's difficult to spend the money and the time and the effort with the rules that are in place, and that they're just too burdensome. And so that's why others would like to see this as a more high priority. That we've had these rules, and we have, as was mentioned, one RDSP in the state, and the feedback that we've gotten from interested parties is I would not say, well, maybe primarily due to our rule, but it's something that we can't just say, well, we're gonna streamline everything. We have to really look at it with a different set of eyes, with the new board members, including the new board member who will be joining us in August. I think that we've learned a lot about and talked a lot about how to streamline our rules so that we still have safety and autonomy in terms of pharmacists. So I think that's where the conversation was heading on why they thought it was important.
Or just, yeah, and that's noted, and I accept that, and, yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. You know, we don't want to be burdensome, we don't want to be overly restrictive, we want to expand access, so,
So
yeah,
our
I
rules
support what the
are
majority
keeping
thinks.
that from happening. So if our rule is making people not do, or making entities not expand pharmacy to other parts of Oregon, then if we are the block, then we need to look at that again. And I'm not an expert on whether we're the block or not, but that's what I'm understanding.
Yeah, I
Not we,
support
but
that.
the rule. Okay, thank you.
Majority.
Board Member Patel, I think we know where you are.
Yes, you guys know you can skip me on this one. I would still say is immediate or high because I don't know, most of the people they follow up with that, but I feel due to some of the PBM reform and legislation and everything, I feel like more pharmacy will close down, and especially those in the rural area. And it's just my heart go out like when people have to drive like 50 miles to get the prescription, and some people they just don't even have the transportation. Some people they just don't have money for the gas, and sometimes they cannot even have the service for the mail. And those community exist, and I feel like, man, we are in America, we are in first world country, and still we have this problem. So whatever we can do, right? We cannot control everything in the world, but I feel like whatever we as a board can control, we should help to increase the access. Thank you.
Board Member Patel, this is Board Member Chen. I would like to honor what Board Member Kirkbride brought up about the immediate, that we have those set up as legislative mandates and emergency issues, public health issues. So I would caution us to add RDSP into the immediate until such time that the legislature says that we need to, if that's makes sense to you. I know that in your heart it's immediate, but I think that we need to follow our process a little bit more.
Sure. No, I totally understand.
Okay.
And I know those bills are going to pass and coming, and I hopefully it's passed, then it
All
will,
right.
we can justify that. Thank you.
You're welcome. I just want to make sure that we put all of that out there. So thank you very much. All right. So Staff Member Runyon. At this point, I think that the only topic that I'm aware of right now is re-adding RDSP, and for the stated reasons. I think we'll keep going around the room about if any other board member. Kroger started, and RDSP has been voiced as an important topic. Board member,
Kirkbride, I just have one more question.
yes, ma'am.
In the high priority list, the telework line is listed as telework / remote processing / central fill. I just want to make sure RDSP is something separate from that entire line. Okay.
I'm having a problem, so I'm doing it on this laptop.
Specifically the part about remote processing. That wasn't intended to be RDSP.
Staff member Melvin. So on the version that I'm typing on, and when we take a break, I will be projecting that when we're done. So all I have done is I've added Division 139 into your high priority list below the Division 41 items that you just mentioned. So it is separated
So
out.
my question is, did this exist on the list before and I just didn't understand that remote processing was RDSP? That's my question.
Staff member Efimoff, RDSP was not contemplated under telepharmacy or teleboard previously, so this would be a new addition.
Yeah.
That could potentially be aligned to mirror with all of those others, if that's what you're potentially referring to.
Thank you, board member Efremov. Work staff, Efremov. Okay, any other questions regarding that and good clarification? Thank you, board member Kirkbride. All right, let's move to board member Beeman. Any thoughts about I think board member Kroger, besides adding RDSP, didn't have any other specific recommendations for changing where things were listed in the immediate high and so forth. Am I correct in that, board member Kroger?
Board member Kroger, no updates to immediate. I am fully aligned with the immediate. The high priority, the only other suggestion would be to move the cold drug storage from medium priority to high priority, if that is the will of you all, and I yield my time.
So is there a way to kind of, I think let's get everybody's ideas and then we can sort out how we want to prioritize that. But you would like cold drug storage to be higher on the list.
That would be my current recommendation, or suggestion, but I have no further things to discuss.
Okay, board member Beeman.
Remember Beeman, I will say, I do think that cold drug storage needs to be reevaluated, given how it has actually played out in real life. But otherwise, I will support the will of the board in the prioritization.
Okay, but you would be okay with that being at a higher priority than a medium
I
priority?
would be ecstatic about it. I think it really, really has had some unintended consequences that has frustrated profession as a whole, and we hear about it and battle it, and yeah, so I think making it a higher priority is definitely something that we need to.
Okay, board member Joyce.
Former Joyce, I'm in agreement with cold drug storage. That's gonna be an interesting debate. In the past meeting, I had proposed a staff delegated authority on cold drug storage, you know, if it exceeded certain parameters, et cetera. But it's definitely a hot topic, so to speak. So we can, yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay with it moving to high priority. One thing, you know, I've been passionate about, because that's been a big part of my career, is the compounding part. I know we use USP as kind of the safety net. However, I feel that Oregon is behind other states when it comes to the use of technology in IV clean rooms. My experience using technology in IV clean rooms has dramatically made it not only more safe, but more efficient. And it saves money because, well, I'm just looking forward to the debate. I'm glad that compounding is there and we can take care of it. I would like board member Beeman to be part of that debate because that's true. So you know, that should be, but where it's at now, I'm happy with that. We need to discuss it and move on. Now, I don't know if where this falls in here, but as I've stated over and over again, along with a previous board member, Vipperman, and the current board member, technician, Pinedo, we're both very pro CPHT, and I don't know where that would fall in this. We bring it up almost every meeting, importance of national certification. I mean, so technically that would be an addition. I don't think it necessarily it's a high priority, maybe medium. But you know, I've brought it up time and time again, and you know, it was reflected in the sentiment by board member Vipperman as well. So I don't know where that would fall in this. And then secondly, what I'm also passionate about is the fee schedule. Is that part of the rules? I mean, the staff needs to look at that because as you know, I didn't care for the technician potential fee increase to $140. And when it comes to adopting the budget and saying, oh, we want to be like California. Well, California has 40 million people. Oregon has 4 million people. Okay, if we're going to base fees on the operational budget of the state, or we should look at the number of licensees, the number of outlets, the number of registrants. You know, in California, they have 40 million people, Oregon, 4 million. Canada has 40 million people. So California's the size of Canada in terms of population. And so to justify that for fees, I'd like to see it, some kind of logic to it, some kind of rationale for why tax pharmacists and outlets have the fees that they're assessed. I don't understand it, and I never have. So I don't know where fee schedule would fit in here.
Board member Joyce, this is board member Chin. I don't think, in my estimation, it doesn't fall under this recommended prioritization for rules. But it is something that it is on our agenda. It is on our agenda to discuss every February with the what are they, the number cruncher person for our board, not a staff member, but pardon me.
It's Chief Financial Administrative Office for
Right.
CFO.
Yeah, that person. So that person is the person who, when we're looking at budget and we're looking at the forecasting of our budget, you've been part of the conversations of why we needed to do that. It was a hard and difficult number to do, but we had almost emergency reasons for having to do that. And hopefully with having these annual conversations and having all board members understanding what the forecast of our agency is, then we will have an effect on how we look at fees for all the different licensees. So that's, I think, where that lives.
So this is board member Joyce. So does the board have any kind of feedback or any, I mean, before a budget is submitted, because it seemed like it was presented to us back when Jamal Fox was ED, and then we had Rosa. I think it was presented to us, and I was under assumption that we would have some kind of feedback. I understand the need for, because we were in the red and we had software update.
We would be, but we are not. We would have been most likely.
Yes, staff member Afromov has her hand up.
Please, staff member.
Thank you, staff member Afromov. I think one thing to remember, I believe it was last meeting or the meeting before, I apologize, they sometimes blend together. There was the further discussion on staff doing a better job at bringing forth the discussions before they can happen. So we have at CG Flores Shelton being able to present this meeting, the budget presentation that she has prepared for you. And every February, we promise that the board moving forward will have a more robust discussion about finances and budget. So that would be a great opportunity moving forward to probably revisit at that February board meeting. So we do have that indicated moving forward. We will do that. And also to keep in mind, if the budget does pass, we will have to write rules about that too. So it does kind of go in the immediate, being able to make sure the fees are correct within our regulations, and additional conversations can happen at that time too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think your wish is going to be granted, sir. Okay, so anything further, Board Member Joyce?
No, I'm just, yeah, that's fine. I'm good. Thanks.
Okay. You're welcome. Board Member Patel?
Board Member Patel, yeah, I think we talked like quite a few times in every meeting about the cold storage should be in the high priority. And the former board members, they also kind of acknowledge that we should keep the drug storage should be in the high priority. So I would keep there.
Mhm.
And I feel like compounding going to the medium because we already have something already in place that follow the USP, and ultimately that is going to be follow the USP. That's the United Standard Pharmacopoeia. That's what we do. So that's what I feel like it.
Thank you. This Board Member Chin, I with so far the majority on the cold drug storage being high priority, secondary to the time that all of us invest, the licensees, the investigators, us on the board, that's a big issue that it needs further rules and thought processes too. On compounding, I am not a pharmacist. I understand what board member Joyce had mentioned about what's happening in his hospital. I'm not sure that we can mandate a lot of the tech things that might be available in our rules secondary to the cost to very budget deficited entities. So I do agree that compounding with the U thingies, UPSDs, USPDs, all of the letters. I think that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're safe with our practice in compounding with the current rules. And if I'm not correct, then I would be happy to be wrong about that, but I'm okay with that being in a medium as well. And I don't have any other further stuff. So Board Member Hall.
Member Hall, cold storage is high priority. It's always been high priority. So I agree with that. Compounding, I think it could go under medium. Support looking at the certified technician licenses again. And, like to see that on there somewhere. I think that was it.
Okay. Board Member Kirkbride.
I agree with most of the high priority category. I actually fully support leaving compounding where it is. I think we had good support from board staff or good evidence from board staff that there is work that needs to be done on compounding that is ready to be finished, and a lot of work has been put in it. And if you remember, the medium category is like potentially 5 years out. I don't want to see that happen. So I think compounding is in the right spot. I do agree that cold storage needs to be moved to a high priority, and I would suggest we move that under compounding. USP does address drug storage, and to me, those things kind of go together. If you're working on compounding, work on cold drug storage. So I'd move cold drug storage to high under compounding. I agree vaccines needs to stay there, and we're already working on that. So that makes sense that it's a high priority. I would suggest that if we get too many things in the high priority list, we look at that Division 41 and consider which of those need to be in the high priority. I would advocate for telework. It is a huge barrier. And then kind of look at some of those other things and which maybe could be moved to medium in that Division 41 stuff. Other than that, I agree with the medium list, and the low list. So my major change would be advocating that we move the cold drug storage to high, and I would not be in support of moving compounding back to medium.
Okay. Board member Hemmons.
Nothing to add.
Okay. So staff member Runyon. I am hearing only a couple of people, and again, I am not the expert at all on compounding, so I would take myself out of really where compounding should be. Not hearing any other strong feelings about compounding coming out of high, but wanting to move cold drug storage from medium to high, and not taking anything out of the high category at this time. I think there were a couple of mentions of adding the CPT someplace in our recommended prioritization. And when, as mentioned by another board member about how many years it takes for something to happen, I think minimally, because it has been mentioned by our board members who are in that license category, at every meeting, that we should maybe consider putting that in the medium. And as we gather more information about licensing and the accessibility and staffing, I think those were the major reasons for making the change that we did, board member Joyce. And when we really increased our licensee and some of the staffing issues, it's a long and hard look at, where, yes, there's a major desire to have everybody have education and licensing, but we have to really weigh it against accessibility and staffing and safety, which is for and against. But what are people's thoughts about adding CPT discussion in the medium category? Board member Kroger, you would be.
Okay, we're going round order. Great. Board member Kroger. Two things. The compounding rules, high priority, medium priority. Are we able to have, can we add, I'd like to review where we're at with those rules to be able to make a decision on if it, in my personal choice, can we get them in the iPad somehow? Are they already there? Wherever you were at when we landed those draft rules, I'd like to just review them again.
So staff member Efanoff, they're actually ready for board review too. So from the time all of the discussions that had been had, we had finished making all the changes that the board recommended. So it has been revised and ready for the board to relook at for the last direction.
Okay.
So we moved.
Yes, I remember Melvin. I went back and I listened to every board meeting and I inserted everything and I did all of that work in the last 60 days. So we were waiting for this priority list to come through to see how we would rank it, and then we'll bring them forward. Yeah.
Okay, but we can't have them.
We need to review them publicly, just like with the rest of our proposed rules as a group. So it'll be a mailing.
This is
Other-
board member, sorry. This is board member Patel. I just want to kind of make a comment about the compounding. Yes, we kind of sort of review those rules. yes, we did have a work group on the compounding, but I just want to point out that whatever that work group committee members said, it did not come correctly to the board members, just the FYI. So if you really want to revisit the compounding rule, in my mind, that is not high priority because we have so many other issues that we should focus on. But then work compounding, I think we should have another work group for the compounding. So the board member, they get the two representation and two, and what is the matter experts and what other work group members they are telling the board, um, instead of whatever happened in the last work group, whatever the work group members said, that did not come up right to the board members.
Member Efremov, can I maybe make a suggestion at this point? It might be helpful then if we could just upload what we have as the final draft of what the rules are currently into the Teams folder for board members to review. And I think part of this conversation was the intentionality that this is a fluid document. So in the regard where everyone feels right now with compounding, perhaps in looking at that and re-looking at it, you might want to make it higher, make it lower in the conversations, and appreciate that this is a new board with new perspectives, and you might think very differently on these rules, and they might change drastically too, and you might want another work group or you might not. So just keeping it open to being able to look at it from that perspective, I think staff can make that happen.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. I need to just review where we were at before I can weigh in on high priority, low priority, whatever. As far as the question, I think that was actually proposed to the group, around the technician certification piece, my suggestion would be that I think this, it should be an agendized item around board discussion, not necessarily a rule review. My thoughts are is I think we need to talk about, the various points. I think we kind of have had those ad hoc throughout the meetings, but I think my personal thoughts are before we add this to the list of prioritization, I think just having a general conversation around the topic of tech certification requirements should be had with the whole group. That's my feelings on that, so we can yield again.
This is board member Chen. That's a good suggestion rather than looking at rule. Board member Kroger, thank you. I would like if when we are, because again, I have one more meeting and I don't know that we're gonna have time in the June meeting for that conversation, but we can certainly discuss that. But certainly at a sooner than later meeting with the new ED and the new board president. But I think that having data both in and out of Oregon for that might be pro or against moving in that direction. And maybe, and I honestly haven't looked at the model rules for NAPB either, in terms of their recommendation. So I think that having an overall understanding of CPT, because we've had board members in the past who are very strongly opposed to requiring certification. And the people who are still on the board with me who have been on there before know, recall that specifically, I'm sure. So I think it does matter on the makeup of the board members. But I think because of that, we really need to have whoever the policy person is, give us a bigger overview of kind of a pros and cons of that whole issue would be my suggestion. So is it fair to say that we'll bring it back for a conversation and ask the policy analyst to be able to tee up that conversation with some data points. Board Member Patel, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I don't mind it, but I think we should keep as of right now, we should keep in the low priority and then we can definitely revisit. I'm
Well,
fine with it.
This is Board Member Chen. We're not talking about this being a looking at rule writing. Everything else on this prioritization list is a rule writing opportunity. We're talking about just having a conversation about where we are as our thoughts are as a board. And again, we'll have a new makeup of the board starting in August, of where we lie with CPT versus not having CPT as a hard stop for moving forward in practice. I think that's a conversation. That's a topic in an agenda and not a rule. So that's what Board Member Kroger proposed, and I do agree with, mostly because we have two very valuable board members who are CPTs, and work in areas where I think we need to honor their voices and their concerns. And I think that's a good way to do that.
Board Member Kirkbride, so Board Member Chin, you're suggesting this goes on that living document of items brought up by board members and then would be prioritized somehow for conversation.
I think it is on correct me if I'm wrong, Board
On the
Member
list already? Okay.
Jeff Melvin. I
Was
think
so long.
it's on the, but I'm,
It's been on the list for quite some time, actually.
yeah, it's
It's
been
been
on
brought
the
up
list.
prior to me.
So what I'm hearing is we will prioritize that conversation from that list.
Right.
So I support that.
And now that there's going to be, a post meeting look at the list and a pre-meeting look at that list, I think that's it's been heard. So, and depending on who the next board president is, can continue to move that forward then as the agenda fits. So, Board Member Joyce, you've been heard. Again. Okay.
I like this different one as well, so.
Board President Chin, I did have one more question about the priority list. I don't know if we're exiting that topic of conversation or everyone has had a chance to talk.
No, we have not, but go ahead.
I forgot to mention this in my section. So when I mentioned we might want to thin down that Division 41 if we feel like the high is getting too big, I was wondering about safe pharmacy practice conditions, not because I don't care about safe pharmacy practice conditions, but at our previous board meeting, this topic did come up and we had a presentation and the question was posed to us. What do we want to do? And I remember there was quite a bit of silence and not a lot of suggestions. So that made me think, is this really a high priority item? Did the board staff have ideas of why this landed in high? And if so, maybe that's one that we could move back to medium if there aren't specific rule ideas of why it was placed in high. So I'd be interested in board staff comments of why that specific line is in high, and board members, if maybe that's when we could move to medium, since we didn't have a whole lot of thoughts about specific ideas we wanted to do.
Staff member Efremov, I believe since this list was created right before previous board members had left, there were some strong feelings on making sure that all of the things that were coming out of the committee for safe practice pharmacy conditions were implemented. The board has moved from the presentation in fulfilling a lot of those, but there was a standing request to have the discussion of if another committee needs to be pulled together and further work being done. From the meeting, the discussion last meeting, I don't think staff has any new novel ideas on how to approach it. It's obviously something that we know is near and dear to everyone's hearts, the basis of what the board is here to do, to ensure safe practice, but I don't know that we have anything to bring forth. If there's specific things, we would love to hear that from the board, so not saying that it even needs to maybe be on the list at all, potentially, depending on board member scale. Thank you.
So in that same vein as our last conversation, maybe that topic of safe pharmacy practice conditions, since we're not talking about a specific rule we want to address in rulemaking, maybe that topic belongs on our living document of topics to discuss versus on this priority list. And that will help us with our high priority list.
Do any board members have comments about where to put safe pharmacy practice conditions, knowing that it's all new and dear to everybody's hearts, but again, not having any new rulemaking or ideas about where to go with anything outside of what we already have for the safe pharmacy practice conditions rule. Do you want it to be put on the living document, or do you want it under a different prioritization?
This is Board Member Patel. I would put in the wish list or living document. But yeah, but I do have one more thing, but I would let everyone get a chance to speak about, where this should.
Yeah, it helps in my brain to just do one thing at a time. Is anybody opposed to moving safe pharmacy practice conditions to the future topics for the board? So board staff, I'm not hearing any opposition to that recommendation.
Board Member Kroger, point of clarity, Kat, does that mean we're removing it from this list to put on the other list?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
That was the question. So instead of having it in a rule prioritization schematic here, putting it on the list that is viewed every board meeting by the board president and executive director.
Board Member Kirkbride, and then in those conversations, if a rule conversation came out of that, like, hey, we want to have this rule, we could bring it back to the priority list. We want to have this rule, and we want it to be this priority.
So that's the proposed move for safe pharmacy practice conditions. Any opposition to that or any concerns to that? Okay, then I think we have direction for safe pharmacy practice conditions. We have recommendations for cold drug storage moving from, I'm not sure where.
It's down in medium.
Medium to high.
Yeah.
Moving it from medium to high. Thank you. And that was, even know who I'm on now. Board member, I think that we were actually, we started with the second round with board member Kroger, so board member Beeman. We have two things that we've changed. We've put, or three things. We added CPT to another notch on the CPT on the list. What are we calling that document?
Just like board meeting agenda topics.
The agenda topics on that list. So we'll put another notch in that we discussed it again today. We're gonna move safe pharmacy, we're going, I mean, still nothing's written in stone here. Moving safe pharmacy practice conditions to the agenda topics, moving cold storage to high priority. Did you have any other comments on this? Or any other suggestions?
Remember, I think that makes a lot of sense. I like the idea of moving these topics from rules where board is just presented with here's rules to having more broad, higher level conversations about it prior to delving into rules. Because as I remember with safe pharmacy practice conditions, we all know what, we all have an idea of what we would want to see. And we all know that there needs to be, that's what our job is. It's hard, though, to make a set of rules to tell people to be safe without being restrictive in so many ways and just making it burdensome to practice, because this rule says you have to be safe and do X, Y, and Z, but X, Y, and Z take away time from actual functions of your daily job. And I think that with a new board and having being in a different time in the pharmacy world now, I think having a higher level discussion is going to be more fruitful than just looking at the rules and saying, let's change this word, let's change that word. Because when it really boiled down to it, a lot of what our initial discussions of safe pharmacy practices was just like, check this box, check this box, check this box, without actually having an improvement in patient safety, because you're just sitting there doing things that may or may not help, but definitely impede. I like that idea of starting at a higher level and then kind of working down to it. Thank you.
This is Board Member Chin. I'd like to build on that just a little bit. When you're talking about having conversations rather than just having rules presented, I think that we have this as a recommended prioritization, but we haven't. And I think we need to wait until we have a new executive director seated and be able to talk about recs and work groups and how this board makeup wants to move on rule writing with those entities involved. I think that that's something that I've heard multiple times, is that we would, that particularly licensees would like to see more, and I don't know if we're moving racks or work groups, but that you would like to have more input from particularly not necessarily SMEs, but people who are, leaders in their fields for these rules. And how does that fit into our recommended prioritization? Because if you're talking about not just having rules put in front of us, but having higher level conversations, I'm trying to see how that fits into an agenda. Did that make sense, Board Member Beeman?
Yes, I guess it would just be part of the topics to be discussed, and I guess if you have to bring it up under a rules portion of agenda, but starting at a higher level than what we were presented with the last time, I think around certain topics, it's going to be more beneficial. I know we're very constrained for time, and we limit our comments as much as possible, and we have tried to rein ourselves in, but there are certain topics that really robust discussion needs to happen. Because
before rule writing?
Well, these rules, I mean, we have rules about them. They're on our rules prioritization to relook at. But I think looking at them and then maybe taking a step back and seeing what's working, what isn't working, and what is burdensome. And keeping in mind, I think some rules that have gone through are more burdensome than anticipated. And so when we're looking at safe pharmacy practice conditions, it's adding more to people that already have a lot, and that's why we're talking about it. And so to put more in rule to make them do it, I think that's why taking maybe a step back and looking at a slightly broader view. I also think we have a new board. We have, since they were last looked at, we will have a new executive director. We will have a new pharmacist consultant. We have new lenses to look through from all aspects. So maybe something more fruitful can come out of it rather than, and saying, yes, here's what we have, but stepping back and maybe brainstorming a bit about, and again, taking inventory of what works and what doesn't to try to improve it.
Okay, thank you. And what I didn't mention when I was going over the things, I think that I'm hearing that compounding needs to, is staying in high, primarily because those rules are already done and are ready to be presented, and we can look at it with all the fresh eyes. And with all the things that you just mentioned, Board Member Beeman. So Board Member Joyce, did you have any other comments?
Board Member Joyce, I'm in agreement with the consensus of the group here. Safe pharmacy practice conditions, so many things can affect that. It's kind of a broad topic. I mean, overly prescriptive rules can affect that, right? The state of the economy, healthcare coverage. It's a broad topic. Some of the rules that we have here have a direct impact on safe pharmacy practice conditions. So I think as far as like establishing a set of rules that specifically address that, I mean, we do that every day when we meet. I don't think it needs to be on this list. I think it's more like a topic of conversation. Like like I said, it's a big basket, and there's a lot of things that affect it: pandemics, PBMs, staffing issues, the economy, how well a pharmacy is doing financially. Those all affect that topic. So it's a large topic. It doesn't appear to fit in this box. It's more like a general conversation. And I think our rules should, every time we review rules, we should look at how it affects, how burdensome it could potentially be, and how restrictive it could be, and how it could affect pharmacy conditions. Thanks.
Thank you. Board Member Patel.
Board Member Patel, thank you, Board Member Beeman, for making that comment. I did not think that way, but you are absolutely right. Those time we write the rules and we write the rules, and I think our intention was not overburden all the pharmacists or outlets, but that's what happened. So yeah, sometimes is good to, after give some time, like look back, like whether step back and see like whether this is working or that is our intention was. So now thinking that way, I would keep safe pharmacy practice condition into the high priority, and it will be quicker this time. And because we already gone through the rule making and everything, it'll be much quicker this time that that rule is working, like opening and closure sign for the pharmacy and all other things. I feel like still is a burdensome. So I would keep in the high priority and look back that does the whatever rule we make, does that serve the intent, or do we have to redundant those rules or modify those rules? Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Chin has nothing to add. Board Member Hall?
Member Hall, are we just talking about the safe pharmacy practice conditions right now?
Talk about anything you want, dear. That's on this list.
I'm fine with putting it on the list for discussion, and I agree that we just, kind of use that every day in what we're doing. I did have a question of what applicability was, and that maybe I should know, but
About, oh, somebody other than I will tell you.
Staff member, so it is in, Division 41 related to, it has to do with who is required to be licensed to perform certain functions or practice in the state or outside of the state. So it parallels, strongly with what non-resident pharmacies chunk of, regulations would be. And the board had started some conversations, made some edits, and that it needed to come back for further discussion, potentially of the consequences, and also prepare probably with legal advice on how you want to proceed.
thank you.
Any other comments, Board Member Hall? Okay, thank you. Board Member Kirkbride?
I guess my only additional comment is that my hope is we continue down the path of discussing standard of care in our regulatory model, is that we actually do more of a thorough review of our regs and rules. Instead of like piecemeal. So I'm assuming at some point in the future, we're gonna do more of a thorough review for things that are on the books. I'm excited as we approach new rulemaking to look at things through that lens. So I'm excited to get started on these new rules, but I don't have anything additional to add.
Thank you. Board Member Hemmons?
Nothing to add.
Okay. We've gone, I think, 3 or 4 times full circle. Board Member Runyon. Board Staff Runyon. Were you able to keep track, or would you like me to sum up what I understand, or would you like to make an attempt at what your understanding is and what we're going to do with this document? Or what the proposed changes are to this document? I'm happy to do what my brain has jotted down.
Staff Member Runyon, if you'd like, Staff Member Melvin could pull up the transcribed list for everyone to see, so we could match that up with what you conjured up and make sure it's consistent with other board direction. Just take a moment for her to get in and out of VPN and vice versa.
Thank you.
Can I add something? And you can put this one in anywhere in the parking lot, wish list, in the low priority, but I feel like we should sometime discuss the wholesaler drug outlet rules too. Because I did heard the complaint from the licensee that wholesalers sometimes they are kind of problem. Sometimes they just don't send the drugs, don't even tell the pharmacy. Sometimes they just cut off their drug supply and patient don't get the drugs, and there's all sort of problem. But I do see that we last revised in 2006, 2009, 2015. It also says like revised on 17, 21, and 22, but I don't recall we ever talk about wholesale drug outlet rules. But that's something, it don't have to be an immediate priority or anything, but I would just like to add that one back of the mind that sometime we have to discuss on those one.
Noted.
So everything
Hey.
in yellow. Just go through it. I took their notes. So I moved that under compounding like it was suggested. Yeah.
Staff member Onion, President Chen. As per what staff member Melvin has transcribed, everything in yellow here is what we've amended during the meeting today per board directions. So we can scroll down and then discuss that if needed. And then the comments were added to reflect board direction on the right. You can see under the high priority list, we've added cold drug storage there in yellow. Then RDSP removed safe pharmacy practice conditions or SPPC there. Of course, removed cold drug storage from the medium and added that to the high above.
The other item too.
Well, on the,
The agenda, the COPT is not gonna be reflected on here because it wasn't on there.
And then the other items for topic discussion were added on the right.
okay. And then on the high priority, what was said about pharmacists prescribing vaccines?
That was on the sorry, staff member Melvin, that was on the existing list. I just pushed it down. It was nested under compounding. That was probably
Oh,
on
was
that
that
list
the-
before we made a decision on that universal
Okay.
process that we're going to send a PFAC.
I'm just
So
wondering, I don't know that, please correct me if I'm wrong, but do we need pharmacists prescribing vaccines on this list at all?
Yes.
Why do we need it on our rules list?
Member agreement, I'd say just keep it there to keep it apparent until we get like the feedback from the formulary committee and like, that was the initial, one of the initial discussions about what we saw in that document today. So I wouldn't call it totally finished yet to remove it from the list. I think keep it there and keep it
Okay,
prioritized until it's finalized.
And it's not just about the protocols. There are several rules we are going to have to change in order to switch to this universal protocol. So
okay, thank you.
pink. All I have amended so far. There was some discussion about PPL, but that we didn't get full consensus on what to do with PPL. You want to just ask her?
Where was PPL before?
I'm sorry, staff member Melvin. So, but yeah, board member Patel had PPL. So some of the list here, we did a kind of a 2-for-1 in some areas, but I didn't hear full discussion on PPL from the rest of the board members to move to immediate is what board member Patel suggested, but.
Yeah, staff member Onion and board member Patel had also mentioned that those are, some of those rules are undergoing current or involved in current legislation. So it may very well put that in the immediate list, depending on what comes out of those joint committees.
Board Member Kroger, I think it's just about keeping this kind of like a live conversation. Like, if it doesn't come out of, the legislature where it requires us to bubble it up, then maybe we have another group discussion, 6-9 months down the line about that, right? If we want to reprioritize that particular topic. So.
Unless I missed anything, that was all that we've captured so far.
Staff member Onion and board president Chen, is there anything that we missed on the list or you'd like to further discuss?
I don't see that you have missed anything that I have not written down. My mind was switching over to, does Amazon do prescription drug lockers since they're already doing lockers for everything else? And pharmacy? So are we content with where we've landed today as a board?
I don't have any strong preference about the CDTM and CPA. As we know, we tried, and all the licensee who is practiced as ambulatory care, another area, they just say do not change anything. And then we also kind of talking about standard of care. So this is just my personal opinion or preference that I think if we can put the CDTM CPA into the low priority, then we can more kind of focus on the other medium priority list before we get to that one, just the FYI.
This is board member Chin. I think it's going to be a long time before we get to standard of care in terms of our rules. I think that there were, my recollection is that there wasn't there an attempt to make this kind of streamlined under one?
Yeah, they were trying to do that, but they fail is just because how is written in the statutes and how we have OAR, and then there is another board is there like Board of Medicine, with given that all the complexity, and then there is a reimbursement piece is also tied
Right.
onto it, and that's
Right.
what I would just say, just leave it alone for now until we figure out something permanently at the legislative level and every overall. So that's what I was like, why waste the time when everyone tell us that why why they are saying what they are saying, all the licensing, and we can just focus on more other topic.
I'm going to defer to other licensees about the importance of these. I use them in practice, so I don't know where this lies in terms of, and I'm not hearing from licensees like board member Patel does, but we can't, I don't think we can rely on one board member's
This
thought
is
process.
board member Patel, and no, this is not board member Patel talking. There's a lots and lots of comments we received from the licensee. If you can look back and see,
Okay,
yeah, just the FYI.
okay, thank you.
Remember Kirkbride, I do have a comment on that.
Please.
I would like to see that stay in medium. I think CDTM is fine, but I would like to sooner versus later address the CPA piece. Specifically for that reason, we have a statute, but we have no rules addressing CPA. So, I'd like to see it stay on medium, and also considering, that list is pretty far out, and we can always talk about where it falls on the medium list, and maybe as we go along, some of these medium things rise to the top of the medium list, but I wouldn't want to deprioritize it to the low list. Especially in ambulatory practice. I mean, there are clinical pharmacy agreements being used right now in pharmacy.
Agreed. Any other comments from board members? So we have a new prioritization list then. And staff member Runyon, how do you see this moving forward to, I'd say, the next board meeting and maybe the board meeting after that?
Staff Member Onion, President Chin, could you just clarify, you mean what rules do we anticipate bringing forward, or how would we handle that in terms of
Yeah.
processing these weekly rules group?
All the above.
Order, do we need to make a motion to adopt this priority list?
It might be in here, yes, it is something, but I
We do.
I wasn't rushing doing the motion yet, because we still had time, we still technically have time if there was more discussion to be had. And I don't want anybody to feel rushed on this part of our meeting.
Board Member Joyce, in low priority, what exactly are drug rooms, quote unquote?
Remember all, I mean, it's like when the pharmacy closes like in a hospital at night, like a smaller hospital, they'll have like a drug room. Where like the head
Where-
supervisor, nurse supervisor of the night can access.
Okay.
Staff member Ekman, I think also, this is one of the rules that maybe have not been touched since like the 80s-ish. And there's different iterations on how practice is changing in different types of drug rooms. So really being able to have that forefront discussions to allow to not be a barrier to as practice changes in our regulatory registration structure.
Joyce, yeah, and I haven't seen too many have you seen cases? I mean, without getting into specifics, have there been cases with drug room violations, so to speak? Because typically what's in drug rooms are the emergency meds, stat medications in hospital settings, so. Yeah, it looks good as a low priority to me, but I'm just curious, has there been cases regarding drug rooms?
Staff member Ekman, I think more the, what we've been receiving are different requests related to, different models that have different structures of practice as it changes, so that the, it's kind of fitting a square peg in a round hole, right? Like they're trying to be compliant with laws and rules, but the way the drug room is written or the variety of drug outlets that are available at this time might not necessarily fit into different practice settings today. So trying to make sure that we're accounting for as practice changes, registrations are updated to fit within that drug outlet registrations to fit within that model.
This is Board Member Chin. Aren't the, would drug rooms fall under the SBARs that we get often from, like community health clinics and, places where they store their drugs and who has access? Do they fall under this?
Staff member Ekman, as far as are definitely, we get requests, exceptions or waivers come through the board through that vehicle of SBAR discussions for possible changes in rules. I think the ones more specifically you're referring to are the practitioner dispensing. So that actually is in the midsection for the CHCs, the community health clinics and the dispensing practitioner drug outlets.
Okay. Yeah, I know that if that's, well, that's on medium priority, and it should be, because we do get quite a number of SBARs for those.
This is Board Member Patel. Regarding the drug room, I agree with our staff, Brianna affirms, like we have to look into those rules on the drug rooms because lot change and lot I heard, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know." Supposed to do that, but I think we should definitely look into the drug room rules, but I don't know whether it should be a low or medium. Now if since we bring up this topic, I think it should be medium, but that's my 2 cents. And according to CPA, board member Kirkbride made comment that we don't have CPA, anything in our OAR. There is an division 855-006-0005. They mentioned the CPA and then CDTM come under the CPA. So there is a definition for the clinical pharmacy agreement. Thank you.
Yes, yeah. There are rules for CDTM, but there are not rules that specify criteria for CPA. We just have the statute and the definition.
Mhm.
Any other discussion regarding our proposed modifications to our priority list? Do you all want to proceed with a motion? We still have 10 minutes to lunch.
Never a bad idea to have a motion on something like this, just so it looks like everybody, has said, if they disagree with it, that's the time, that's the way they can show it. So it's never, doesn't hurt anything to have a motion on it, so.
Does say action necessary on the agenda, which makes me feel like typically vote.
We,
Right.
Staff Member Melvin, we drafted a motion because we had the board vote on the prior ranking
Okay.
list, so we just were following suit. Yep.
As revised, right?
As revised, yeah.
We're ready here in this room whenever you're ready, President Chin.
Okay, then I'm ready. Is
Oh,
there,
are we reading the, hold on, are we making motion?
that's what I was, I was, yes, unless you would like to have more discussion.
Yeah, no, I don't like more discussion, but I want to see the final version that, high, medium, priority, like all together instead of like this, if it's possible. If it's not, then I can scroll up and down. You know what I mean?
So for where,
So the version I'm sharing right now, if you look at our screen, Board Member Patel, the version I'm sharing right now, it would be the adopted version. Oh,
Okay.
are you saying you want to see it amended up in like this colored?
Yeah, something like that. And if we can
Okay.
do it after lunch, I think that'll be fine too. So everyone kind of get a little bit moment to think about it, and then we can make a motion after lunch. If everyone is agree with that, just saying. Anyway, we're like only 5 minutes away from lunch, and we can relook at it, and then we can make motion.
Yeah, Board Member Patel, since you are remote, would it help on the document that Staff Member Melvin was able to make modifications to?
Yeah.
Would you like her to email you and Staff Member Melvin, is that something doable? To the folks that, or just maybe just to send it to everybody, whoever wants to look at it on their 1 hour lunchtime. If there's a desire to digest it before we have a vote.
Sure. If the board would like to see this version in Teams, and then we could consider a motion after lunch that would allow me the time to do both of those things for you. Sure.
That'd be awesome. Thank you very much. So we're not going to do a motion before lunch. Staff Member Melvin is going to put the document she's adjusted on Teams. We will have I don't know if you have time or if you're able to adjust the one with colors schematic and just have that up on the screen when we do our vote, but we'll have a vote after lunch.
Yes, I believe with Staff Member Efremov's help, we can make this happen.
Okay, so we are at what, 11:55 your time? Do you want 5 extra minutes for lunch? I don't think that there's anything that we have to discuss for 5 minutes.
No,
Everybody, extra 5 minutes for lunch?
Very good. I can do this work. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Resume back at 1 p.m.
1
Right?
p.m. We'll
Okay.
be back.
Thank you. Okay.